All right, we're going to talk about PowerShell stuff. So here we go. This is the standard forward-looking disclaimer. We're not going to blah, blah, blah. Next. We're going to talk about who we are, and then we're going to talk about why we care about PowerShell, and then we're going to talk about how to set up PowerShell, and then we'll get into the queries we use to find malicious activity based in PowerShell land. You want that one? Sure. All right. We work for Bechtel Corporation. We're one of the largest construction, project management, and engineering companies in the world. Like I swing a hammer, right? We build mega projects, so think of like billions or tens of billions of dollars. Examples, international airports, the Hong Kong International Reinvigoration, Hoover Dam, Palo Verde Nuclear Generation Station, like really big things. So we have projects in 160 countries on all 7 continents. You probably never heard of us. But we're a very large company, and we have a lot of advanced persistent threat interest because of our methodologies that we implement. When I say we, I'm referring to the construction engineering side. All right, this is my slide. I'm a network security monitoring analyst under Lisa over here. So we work on the NSM arm of our CERT, and I function as one of the primary incident handlers. Along with that, where'd he go? Where'd he go? He's right there. Hi, Drew. And I'm also the liaison between our SOC. So I was formerly a SOC lead, so I know how they do their thug thizzle. So I help foster communication between our team and our SOC. And when people have problems, I just tell them to go look in Splunk. I did. No, you didn't.
I'm Lisa. I'm the security unicorn at Bechtel, and probably the only person that gets to put that on their business card, at least here. I'm the team lead for the network security monitoring infrastructure team. I am also the Splunk administrator. I also break Splunk on a regular basis, and then I have to fix Splunk, and I'm also the person that tells Ryan to go fix Splunk, which is beneficial now that he's actually taken training. This is a nice, lovely quote. Not enabling PowerShell logging would be criminal, which means you should absolutely freaking do it if you have Windows environment, which I'm sure you all do because you're a nice big corporate or small corporations and everybody loves Windows.
I put this quote in our RFC. It was like the reasoning section. I put that as my first sentence and I got a bunch of blowback. Like, you gotta take that out. I was like, fine, I guess.
So we added it to our slide set?
Yeah.
There is also another PowerShell talk going on later on Thursday. It's with Steve and Ryan Covert. Steve Brandt and Ryan Covert, they're Splunk guys. We highly recommend that you, in addition to attending this one, also attend theirs. They're covering slightly different areas, so it won't be too much overlap, and it should be an awesome talk as well.
Okay, why focus on PowerShell? Well, first off, how many of you know that your DevOps teams or your basic IT teams or whatever actually use PowerShell for administrative purposes? Raise your hand, nice and high. Okay, so in many environments, that's not the case. In some environments, that is the case. The thing is, whether you are using it, you as in the royal you, right, in your organizations, the attackers sure the hell are. And the reason they're using it now is because it's a powerful built-in tool that has access to freaking everything in Windows land, right? Every little environment possible, they have a quick way to jump and reach into. So it's already in your environment, right? If you're running Windows, or your users are running Windows, it's in your environment. Unless you're, what was it, Lisa? Unless you're back in XP land, in which case, well, you got other problems. So a hacker's best toolkit for anyone who's done pen testing before are tools that are already sitting on the box, right? If you don't have to bring your own compiler, these type of things, right? Yeah, there's this wonderful framework just sitting there waiting for attackers to leverage it. So it can execute in memory, remain diskless, and typically it's easy to avoid detection, and we aim to thwart that a bit. Remote access methods are inherent and easily accessible within the framework. We're going to talk about some of them. And it integrates, again, with all core Windows components, 32 API, with 64 API, Windows management instrumentals, the WMI, the entire .NET framework. Like, they can load assemblies and DLLs via PowerShell. You can do whatever you want in PowerShell. Access the registry, the firewall, like you name it, it's possible to manage that through PowerShell. So we looked at an analysis, hold on here. Yeah. Via Carbon Black's report. I have a link to it in the references. They looked at 1,100 cases and found of incidents, what falls into an actual oopsie rather than just an event. and they found that PowerShell was leveraged in 38% of those bad boys. Of those, 31% of those did not generate any alerts whatsoever for the alerting teams. That's almost a third. That's problematic. Right? And of those, 13% were actually APT-based. So people who are like, PowerShell's not really being used. Yeah, it totally is. And not only that, but there's various frameworks that are already available for people to use PowerShell to pwn your boxes. Examples being PowerSploit, Nishang, the PowerShell Empire. There's plenty of them out there, so heads up on that. We primarily chose to focus on PowerShell because we had a penetration test in Q4 of 2015 last year. It was in November. And we were just sitting there one day, la-di-da-di-da, and we have particular contracts I can't go into, and because of some of those contracts, we have to have penetration tests. Well, this particular one that occurred, we caught them within an hour. And the reason we caught them is because they relied heavily on PowerShell. I can't say who they are, but I just want to throw out there, they're a really good team, and they have a very high success rate. And we were all happy, right? Right, Danny? We were all extremely happy that we were like, oh, look, they're right there. Yay! That came about because one of our CERT analysts on our forensics team, Keith Tyler is this fellow's name. He's got a great blog, by the way. Check it out. Keith Tyler, I'll give him a plug there. He was reading an article back in, I believe it was February of 2014. Just some random OSINT-based open source intelligence article. And it was like, hey, APT, I don't remember, 4227, one of the numbers. They're leveraging base64 encoding via PowerShell. And he thought to himself, we should probably alert on that, right? So he wrote a safe search and dropped it into Splunk, and it sat dormant for almost 2 full years until in early November it fired, and all of us were like, oh, damn it, that's not good, right? So it just sat doing nothing. So yeah, it's very important to read up research. When you see new ways to leverage these frameworks, like just try to report on that. Just try and alert, see what happens.
Also, I believe our pen tester actually rage quit in the middle of the pen test and just like went home, had a beer.
Yeah.
Or 5.
Yeah, we annoyed the team because we kept finding they were relying on it too heavily.
All right, I'm going to go over how to set up PowerShell logging. For PowerShell logging, you need Windows 10 plus. If you have something Windows 10, it already is included. You're fine. You don't need to do anything else. If you have one of the older versions of Windows, you're going to need to make sure that you have .NET 4.5 and the Windows Management Framework of 4.0 plus. This is probably already there. If you're a system admin guys are already using PowerShell, you're probably already good on that one. If you got an older system, you got massive problems that don't have anything to do with PowerShell, but you should probably update your OS. Next thing is PowerShell 5 says that it logs the important events by default. According to Microsoft, this is awesome, except that it doesn't really do all the logging that you need to actually catch people. So just ignore that little Microsoftism and go ahead and set it up yourself. If you are using PowerShell 4 and you're like, I don't have PowerShell 5, my people won't let me do that, go to Steve and Ryan's talk on Thursday. They have the how to set it up for the lower versions.
But upgrade anyway.
There's a ton of different ways to log PowerShell. There's process auditing, which is Windows Event ID 4688. This enables command line capturing, which is pretty awesome because in your Windows event log, you can actually see the command, where it was executed, what parameters were passed to it. Module logging is Event 4103, and the variable that you're going to be looking for in there is payload. It records the pipeline execution stuff, which is also beneficial because you want to know when they're passing stuff around. Script block logging is Event ID 4104, and the variable field that you're looking there is the script block text. We're using WLS to collect our logs. It's pretty freaking awesome. It has a lot of details, but I'm pretty sure you can get this from all the other various Windows logging sites. The final thing that you want to also turn on is transcript logging. And this will log all the PowerShell events to a text file, and then you can pull in that text file into Splunk and also do queries on it. There's one little tidbit here. You might not want to enable 4105 or 4106 because those are some chatty freaking logs because, Windows loves to log every single thing known to man. That'll fill up your Splunk indexer. On the other hand, you might it is also used by some actors to fill up your event logs so that you won't notice their activity. So maybe you do want to look for it, or maybe you want to enable a check to look for when that is turned on if you have it turned off in your environment. There's a lot of things you can do there. We're going to talk about the enabling these individual things. This is the process audit creation 4688. So you can do this via GPO, or you can do it via the registry. We have these like GPO specific Windows layouts. If we go to the next slide, you can go to it and look at it and enable it through the detailed tracking under audit policies, audit process creation. You're obviously going to want to look at these slides later, or just do it by the registry. This one is under the administrative templates audit process creation, and we are enabling or adding the include command line process creation events, because those are where all the cool details are at.
I should mention that's not just for PowerShell. By enabling process auditing, you get all process execution, and when you enable this, thereby all the command line arguments. That's a whole. We could talk for hours on just the importance of that. But you also get when they run PowerShell via the CLI.
Let's see, 41 and 03 and 04. It's another GPO setting, and basically your key things is you're going to want to turn on the module logging, add the module names, which is just star, and then you want to turn on the script block logging and the transcription logs. We also have some pictures here. Computer configuration, blah, blah, blah. Let's look at the little picture. Because nobody cares about Windows GPO settings. So you want to turn on process logging module and those other two. And the one on the bottom there, that's the one you don't want to turn on, and also the script execution. And this is where you want to put star for the module names, because you want to log all the modules that are being logged, or that are executing on your machine.
This is my fault. It's a bad screenshot. You're like, it's not star, stupid. It says stuff. Yeah, just put star. For one value, star, hit enter. I was specifically testing, and I failed Lisa.
This is what happens when you rely on other people to make your slides. Okay, now we're going to go over ingesting the actual transcript logs, which, like I said earlier, is the file that gets written to a text file, assuming you configured your registry to send it somewhere. In this particular case, we're sending it to this log files directory, PowerShell, blah, blah, blah. And we have an index called PowerShell. And if we go to the next one, we're going to go over some really gory props and transforms.
Pretend that was edited out. Next.
Transcript logs are very, very large and messy. I looked at it the first time Ryan gave it to me, and I'm like, what the hell do you want me to do with this? And so I'm like, okay, I'll take a stab at this. We got a lot of variables with like colons and data after it. But then we got this giant like chunk of text under transcript between the start times and the end times. Let's go. Here's a closer up version of the slide. And we have another one. This is the actual, what I've labeled standard out, because that's pretty much what it is in the world of computers. This is the actual stuff that gets printed to the screen. This is the line breaker. The line breaker was an interesting thing. I was like, I don't know how to break this thing up. So then I'm like, well, we want it as one whole event. What's the single most identifiable thing? End time. So I made the line parser equal to the end time. And then everything was like golden in Splunk, so we're all happy. Here's we got blown up slides in this bit. This is a little eye chart that is all the props and transforms, or that is all the extracts for the fields. Most of them are simple. Can you get the little boxes up? We're going to discuss in detail a couple of these more tricky ones, because everything else is just like literally like, here's a variable name and here's a field and a colon, go pull it out. Regex's simple. These were slightly more complicated. I ended up having to deal with some random like Windows uses carriage returns instead of new line stuff, and so that made it slightly more complicated and confusing when I was pulling them out. So here's the actual extract. And so, as I mentioned, that /r at the end of it is simply because it's a crappy Windows text file instead of a Unix file. I'm obviously biased here. You don't know the number of times that carriage return and new line has screwed up my programs in the past. this is the standard out stuff, and I just wanted to get this into one variable because it's going to be a variable amount of data in there anyways, depending on what's being executed. So I just wanted it in one giant variable. Next. All of it. So this was weird. I had to use single line mode and multi-line mode in the same extract to get all the data. Single line mode makes the dot match. It includes the new line, so it doesn't work like the normal regex where new line doesn't count. And then the multi-line mode changes also the way a regex works. And the end result is, scroll back up. The end result is you need single line and multi-line in order for this to actually work and get the data that you want out. Fortunately, I've already figured out all this crap, so you don't have to deal with that. This is my other random slide. This has nothing to do with PowerShell. This is just me bitching because I can. And you're here and you're captured. Whatever you do, if you live or if you work in a company that has multiple different time zones, which is a lot of companies, make sure you use UTC. This is some Cisco router logs that somebody gave me. And I pulled them in and I'm like, what the hell? There's like 7 different timestamps, time zone formats, 4 or 5 different time zones. And I'm just like, do you not configure your routers in any sensible manner? How am I supposed to add this into Splunk? So I said, we'll just use the time that it arrived at the syslog server and move on with life. And then I had to go yell at the networking team to go fix their stuff, which I still need to do. So yeah. All right, on to you.
Cool. So we're going to talk about, once you already have logging implemented, and I know a lot of the regex, if you're sitting there like, I can't see that, damn it. The goal, like she said, is for you to look at it later, and we're going to share some stuff out. So you're like, oh, I'll just copy that, and then there you go. So what can we find in there? Well, we can find tons. In fact, I just updated our GitHub repo, our public one for the work, Bechtel cert, and I dropped in a text file. It's github.com/Bechtel cert/Splunk searches or Splunks. I don't know, just go there. You'll see the only Splunk thing in there. It's that. I have it on the slide later on. And I dropped in a bunch of them, but we're going to cover some in detail. So first up, remember when I was talking about that pen test that we had, where we all of a sudden that little magic query just got, yay, look at that. And we found a bunch of crap and we're like, oh, that's not good. Well, that was this guy right here. First thing we do is we start off with WLS logs. WLS stands for Windows Logging Service. Anyone here use WLS? Obviously, I think you guys use it. Anyone familiar with WLS? Jason McCord, Honeywell's? Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's awesome.
So it's fantastic, and like Lisa said, it grabs a bunch of additional metadata and just shoves, actually that was David in his talk, he mentioned that. Sorry, anyways. So some of you, like for example, just yell it out, participate. How are you collecting Windows event logs?
Tell Brian to use forwarder.
Forwarder? Universal forwarder? The direct files themselves? Cool.
Or Sysmon.
Anyone here using Sysmon? Cool. Not for Windows? All right.
Snare.
What about Snare? You see Snare? Okay, so a lot of you are just...
One lonely Snare person in the back.
Yeah, right? Okay, so most of you are just bringing it right over the universal forwarder, right? Okay, cool. So you have your event logs, awesome. In this case, just change the index and move along with life. Next up, we're looking at this example here was 4688. And if you remember, 4688 is process creation, okay? So we were logging the command lines for process creation, and so we were looking at command line values specifically. A lot of the searches we're going to go over here, I just want to put it out there right now that while I'm going to talk about per individual search, either 4688, 4103, or 4104, if you're going to implement these searches in your environment, you're going to want to have a search for each. Or you can have one big ugly one that looks into each proper field matched up to the proper index. But you get the idea, okay? Don't just choose one example. Next up, what we were looking for was base file name is PowerShell.exe. So when PowerShell happens to be running, and the command line includes this guy right here. Anyone know what that is? -en. What is that? Encoding. Yeah, encoding. And PowerShell, to encode in base 64, you can use -en, you can use -enc, you can use -encode, or -encode command. And I'm sure there's a couple other freaking derivatives of the damn thing. And then this is the most important part right here, hence the ripping off the weird clip art thing there from wherever I stole that. Baseline, okay, trim out all the false positives. And that's why I asked initially, how many people do you know your environments, you already use PowerShell for proper management? I think quite a few of us actually should be using it more. Not us, but you know what I'm saying, your environmental IT folk. So in this case, you first run this and you're like, Ryan, that search sucks because I'm getting, you know, like these Oracle servers are using PowerShell. All right, so knock the damn thing out, right? The service account, the Oracle, you get the idea. And be very verbose with your trimming out the fat because you don't want to accidentally, don't do something like not host equals and be like, oh, I don't care about that Oracle host. Okay, good luck with that, right? Because then when it's used fraudulently on that host, you get the idea. Okay, and then here we're using a cute little table that you don't care about. So this is what we got back in on November 9th. We got the following. PowerShell.exe, NOP. Anyone know what NOP is? It's not the NOP you're probably thinking of.
No. Profile.
Yeah, it's not that NOP. It's no profile, so don't load user profile. Use a system default profiles to avoid weird environmental variables set in PowerShell profiles. W hidden is hidden window. And then encoded command. And we have PowerShell, or excuse me, we have base64, and I've snipped it out, obviously. So, and also here, we had them using execution bypass to bypass the execution policy, because users are admins, so why not ignore that. Moving on. So we decode the base64 snippets, and we found this. They're creating an object variable called S, and they're filling its memory with the contents of a decoded base64 string. So, base64 to a secondary PowerShell script with a secondary set of base64. That's cute. And then they're taking that new object and they're decoding it with gzip. So another layer of obfuscation there. Decoding that led to yet another PowerShell, tertiary PowerShell script. Obviously by now we're already thinking what? Ruh-roh. Yeah, oh shit. Right, this isn't just some administrator like, yay, you know, that's not happening. So, whoopsie. So I actually said secondary. Technically, that was the tertiary PowerShell script. So they figured, whoever wrote this, well, we know who wrote it actually. They figured, well, they're not going to deobfuscate down to this level. So they were very specific on, like, they didn't obfuscate further. And there was a variable called var code, and it was shell code. So those of you who are not familiar with shell code, the idea is to move your instruction pointer into the malicious code, execute directly on the processor. It's all the bad, your own security, you know what shell code is. So the shell code that they created creates a named pipe, and that's used for inter-process communication, IPC. And as you can see, at this point, there's a big damn it, right? We raised the damn it flag. No! So we declare an incident, and we went from there. Now, we found
Friday,
them...
Right?
What's up?
Incidents are always declared on Friday.
Yes, Friday at 5 p.m. Yeah. Sir. All right, so another example here, we enhanced the base64 encoding to actually base64 decode right in Splunk. That requires the use of this guy up here, an app called Decrypt. It's app number 2655. I don't know if apps are actually numbered, but you know in the URL, it's 2655, so go find that. Or just type in decode, whatever. Now, it does more than base64, but we found this to be fairly useful. Who came up with this, Keith or Mike?
I don't know.
Probably both.
I installed the app.
I'm going to go Keith and Mike. I don't know. So, again, 4688, base file name command.exe, looking for encoding. But please notice, see right there? Base64 string. If you noticed in this slide right here, where'd it go? Right there. See that right there? From base64 string, there's multiple ways to encode base64. So don't just see mine and go, oh, cool. Well, we'll share a bunch, but heads up. So, then what we do is we're going to rex out the command line that includes the encode command. And then we're going to pipe it over to decrypt. And we're going to decrypt base64. And then we're just going to search and see if we actually got any decrypted base64. Decoded, excuse me. I'm going to get into an argument about semantics. So if we happen to find any, great. And we can take a look at it right there in Splunk. Fantastic. Okay, let's talk about other stuff now. Remote sessions. Anyone here use remote sessions in PowerShell? Right? Very powerful stuff. And of course, attackers are like, ooh, I can remotely do PowerShell? Yay! So what you should focus on is the Windows Remote Management, PS remoting, PS session. Invoke command in and of itself, it's used for a million things. But when you also add the dash computer name to that, and you're typically specifying a remote host, that could be problematic. And then typically, any use of just dash computer. Although, for some reason, many Microsoft scripts default to using dash computer and specifying the local host. I don't know why they just don't do that part, but I'm sure there's a reason. I don't know. Maybe to make it easier to, who cares? Moving on. So also, you should worry about the web services for management, WS-man. Here I'm in PowerShell, and I'm just running git help WS-man, because I just want to see what commandlets are included in our instance on this particular host. And you see all this crap over here? That's just all Windows management stuff, modules that if it's not one of our people running it, I don't want to see it running. Or I guess I technically do want to see it. I want to see it quickly and urgently, technically. So here's an example using 4103 event codes. And notice right here, I'm also using provider name equals Microsoft Windows PowerShell. Everyone here knows that Windows or Microsoft likes to any Microsoft people here, by the way? Probably should have asked that question. I didn't say anything bad, did I?
No, I probably
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, okay, good. Yay. It will reuse event codes for different applications, right? So with the provider name, you're going to hone in on what you want. And then if you remember what Lisa said, for 4103 events, the main field that you're really concerned with is payload. That's where all the stuff is, right? So we're doing raw string searches here. And some of you might be like, well, in the payload, aren't there additional fields you could parse out? Yeah, good luck with all that. So I've been working with some other folks that I met at Conf last year and farting around with it. Yeah, just do the raw string search. Any Fezzes in here? They're going to yell at me for saying do a raw string search, but trust me, it's really annoying. Yes. All right, here's the exact same thing, but using event 4104. So look at the differences. 4103, 4104. Down here, we have script block text instead of payload. That's it. That's the only difference. All right, so again, you can combine these, but when you combine them and put them onto one big slide, it looks ugly as hell, so I didn't want to do that. All right, and here's some interesting stuff. So again, I went back to 4688. I don't know, why not? And we're looking at, by the way, if you're going to focus on 4688, look at the base file name equals PowerShell star. Can anyone guess why I chose PowerShell star?
Multiple versions.
What's that? Versions. Potentially versions. They've typically sat with PowerShell.exe, but we don't know, right? But also, anyone familiar with ISE? The PowerShell GUI editor, right? It's PowerShell _ISE, and you can actually invoke that through the command line also. So, and then also looking for command.exe, where you might see invocation of PowerShell.exe, and we're looking for the following. Now, again, this goes back to why I started this talk off by asking how many of you know that in your environment, PowerShell is being used. These items are used for host-based enumeration, okay? Getting processes and getting services, is that inherently malicious? Of course not. But if it's not your people doing it, well, then probably, right? Like, what's going on here? Getting file hashes. I know that even our IT departments aren't getting file hashes via PowerShell, but of course, attackers are leveraging the hell out of that. And in get hotfix, what do you think get hotfix does? Anyone?
See what version.
Yeah, see what versions of updates are installed, right? And the goal there is see what's not installed. And again, host enumeration, see where the host is vulnerable. And then down here, this is something that I learned from Michael Go, Hacker Hurricane. He's not here this year, but you're going to hear his name probably all over the place. And he was letting me know that you can actually CD directly into the freaking registry via PowerShell. But literally, it's just CD and then HK and then LM for local machine or whichever hive you so choose. Not only that, but using get item property and then again the hive and the actual key value, you can pull keys and you can also set keys and so on and so forth. And then down here, net firewall rule is where you basically add, modify, or delete firewall rules. So I know that in IT, we don't manage our host-based firewall at all with PowerShell. And so when that fires, it's like, whoa, what are you doing? All right, injection. Here, I actually just gave up just to show you, instead of specifying 4103, 4104, or 4688, I'm just showing like, whatever. Pick your proper index, whether it's the PowerShell index that we made for our transcription logs, or whether you're specifying your Windows event logs like ours in WLS, or yours from the Universal Forwarder with its standard win event : source types, right? Isn't that what those are? Win event? Anyone? Sure, Ryan? All right, cool, sounds good. So in here, you have to focus on when PowerShell is getting handsy and it's basically injecting into DLLs and or just loading freaking DLLs. So for example, get assemblies is how you can load DLL files directly through PowerShell. Assembly name, system DLL, where a lot of the PowerShell functions actually reside. Get procedure addresses, module handles, and then interop services handle references All this stuff right here, it's this one right here, you're probably not going to see much at all in your environment. And if you do, you're going to want to review that immediately. And an example of a framework, one of the frameworks is PowerShell Mafia's Powersploit. Anyone here familiar with Powersploit? Cool. Anyone use Powersploit? Yeah. To do research and work stuff, right? yeah, that's it. So Powersploit is fantastic. It has all kinds of cool pre-built modules. It's open source. There's the GitHub page right here. So we're going to get to that in a moment. And the idea is anyone running Powersploit in our environment? Well, if they're not on your security team, they probably shouldn't be, right? What are you doing? So you can look for that. And a way to keep abreast of all the changes with the Powersploit framework, it's open source. Just go check out the freaking GitHub page, right? They have various modules. The example I chose for this was code execution. So when I click on code execution, I find these guys right here. 4 commandlets that are available for code execution-based stuff. So I simply take those names and I put them into a Splunk search. Now, this would not work if what? What's that? Well, yeah, if you don't have logging. Yeah, touche. That was a pretty simple answer. Yeah, you got me. This will not work if the attacker literally just changes the damn commandlet names. But, you know, in many attack scenarios, they don't. They just dump Powersploit in the box, and they go, whee, and they run the damn thing, right? And that includes APT. You'd think, like, no, they're going to be sophisticated. Nope. I mean, they might, but I'm just saying. So here's our example, and here we're looking into our PowerShell index, and Lisa set up the standard out to look like standard_out, right? So in here, we're just looking for the raw strings of those 4 module names. Now, this is for the slide because I just put 4, but what we did is we actually just, went through, recursed through here, grabbed every module name, put it into a big old search. And we have found 1 hit thus far on this is actually not an official one, sorry, for our SOC, but I have emailing myself. And we got a hit on it. And I was like, oh no. And it was actually in our headquarter location. I was like, what's going on? It turned out it was one of our senior project IT manager guys just playing around. And I was like, stop it. What are you doing? All right, and here's another example of, we're about 10 minutes out probably. Yeah, perfect. So download copy shenanigans. This is what's going to get you the most results right now. Anyone here familiar with Dridex or Dridex derivatives? If many of you, I didn't see a whole lot of hands, but trust me, you probably are. You just maybe don't know the name Dridex. All this, half the damn spam that comes in, I made that number up, by the way, but a lot of the spam that comes in, it's Dridex oriented or some variation of it. So what we're looking for here is in PowerShell is someone using copy item or .copy here. Now that is fairly generic, okay? Again, if you're having administration done via PowerShell, you're gonna see that, whatever. These ones, however, new object is also kind of like whatever, but when you see those in relation to web client, download file, or invoke web requests, those are the top 3 that a couple of us have put together, for downloading files remotely from the internet. So Dridex uses that web client, it does new object, web client, and then it does download file right after it. And then it does invoke command after that, and so on and so forth. So if you just string these together, again, at first they may be false positives, but you'll eventually find some cool stuff. All right, and this is just before the show, like an hour ago, I think, whatever it was. I put up some Splunk searches on our GitHub page. So we're at Bechtel Cert, and it's called Splunk Queries. That's what it's called, apparently. And I put up a little text file, Splunk Hunting PowerShell. So if you have some to add, and you want to, whether you want to do a fork it, whether you want to do a pull request to me, whatever. I'd really like to talk to people who want to share hunting-based queries, because that's what we do. That's one of our big things. So check those out. There's more that I didn't cover today. Some of the ones I covered are obviously in there.
So to go over the takeaways from our talk here, PowerShell is already in your environment, especially if you're using Windows of any kind. Is that me? PowerShell logging must be enabled to capture all this, and the event codes of interest are 4103, 4104, and 4688.
Cool. Remember to always get your baseline to trim that fat out. And when I say trim fat, a lot of people like to stop dropping in the queue, right, the null queue in Splunk to not get certain logs. We rarely do that. We want all the logs. But when you're alerting to your SOCs, your search, whatever, you don't want to piss them off with busy work and then lose respect and so on and so forth. So, just get your baseline stuff ready. And then finally, ongoing research. Whenever you read an article that talks about, hey, PowerShell's being leveraged differently, or anything for that matter. We're researching now, well, some of our guys are researching like abusive bits admin protocol for attacks. Like, you read that and just always try to think to yourself, how can I implement that in a freaking Splunk search? And then try to trigger it yourself, and if it's dormant after that, let it ride. And eventually, who knows, maybe 2 years later, you'll find a pen test team or something.
We wouldn't be able to do our jobs at Bechtel without Splunk. It's fantastic for our security operations center in general, and we're also expanding into the IT area as well. But we absolutely love Splunk to death, being that this is like, what, my third talk here, and you're like ridiculous number of talks.
Yeah, fifth talk. I love Splunk. I like Splunk.
He talks a lot.
I'm sure you noticed. Yeah, speaking of jobs, we are going to have an opening soon for our cert. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but it's too late now. I just did. So, heads up on that.
Probably in Glendale, Arizona, Reston, or Oak Ridge.
Jobs@bechtel.com.
Or if
you can't do that.
In San Francisco. I like San Francisco.
Probably should have asked, like, oh, too late now, right? All right, moving on. Now, I would highly recommend, hence why I put highly recommended up there, for everyone to go check out Michael Go, Hacker Hurricane's website, Malware Archaeology. He did a talk last year also on how to find malicious stuff using 6 event IDs, and it's great talk, great example also of another group of people, he and the people he knows, who hunt using Splunk and try to find things that otherwise you're not going to find. We spend millions, right? I know you do too. We royally, we've spent millions on all these systems, and they're supposed to catch all the, and you have your runtime environments. I won't name any specifically, but you'd be amazed at what those won't technically find that you'll just find through reading articles and trying stuff out. So, by the way, Michael has a Windows PowerShell logging cheat sheet. We were going to write one, and then we read his, and we're like, well, we're not doing that. So he also includes the exact registry keys. So if you don't want to use like ADMX files to make GPOs on your 2012 or 2003 servers or whatever, just use his registry methods.
Doesn't he also have a script that can just go through and do it for you?
Yeah, if you told me earlier and I forgot already. So yeah, he also has a script, and you can just go boop and double click it, and then yay.
The other thing, I think Steve Brandt and I were working on pushing out a TA and pushing it to Splunk base for the PowerShell transcript log parsing. See if I can talk properly. Yeah, so that should be out at some point. I need to connect up with Steve to see what's going on with that.
Cool. And speaking of Steve, once again, their talk is heavier on setting up PowerShell logging. So while we did cover it, they cover it all the way down to version, not really 2, because you're not going to get much out of that, down to version 3. They go into it in more detail, and they give different queries. So if we kind of piqued your interest, definitely go check them out.
Yeah, we actually spoke to them so that we wouldn't have too much duplicate topics.
Yeah. And references, bam.
Any questions?
Yeah, cool, that's it.